Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Threezero DLX scale Transformers figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at Transformers The Last Knight Nemesis Prime. Now I got mine as a review sample direct from Threezero. I've popped a link to their site in the description, but I think at the time of filming this video, Nemesis Prime is sold out. Keep an eye on their website. Every now and then they do reissues. Now, if you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as brand new Transformers content goes live on the channel. Say what you will about the Bayverse, especially TF4 and 5, this Knight look for Optimus, this design for him, it went hard. Especially when Quintessa turned him into Nemesis Prime. As soon as we got this Knight-style Optimus from Threezero in the DLX line, I was hoping for a Nemesis Prime repaint. And here he is. As for the box art, love it. It's almost classic retro looking like the old school Bayverse toy boxes, and they're leaning into that. With the vibrant colours, the red and blue, the lens flares and whatnot, I'm here for it. An image of the actual figure up front, his name down below, then a Transformers The Last Knight movie logo, and Transformers off to one side done in purple. To homage his purple eyes, I think. The purple eyes I was just talking about. The more I see of this piece, the more freaking excited I get. That is the actual figure on the side of the box. Granted, the burning embers and the glowing effect that's simulated in Photoshop, but still, I'm really keen to get him out here. Around the back, warnings and legal information, and 2 images of the actual figure. I just wish this one was a little bit easier to see. I get it, he's shrouded in darkness because of the evilness of Nemesis Prime. But they've highlighted this one of him holding the shield with the cannon bits on it, over and above the picture of him brandishing the one real new accessory he comes with, the 4-barreled gun. Oh, and off to the other side, a massive Transformers logo. On this side of the box, a different image of the figure himself versus the other. Opening this top flap held in place with Velcro, more figure photography, as well as an open window showcasing Nemesis Prime and all of his accessories inside the box. Threezero, the cheeky devils, they kept us waiting 2 years for this repaint. Better late than never? Yeah, I think so. First in-hand impressions for Nemesis Prime? Really good. Substantial in hand, there's a lot of die-cast here, and there's more weathering at play for Nemesis Prime versus Optimus. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box, and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first. Not every Threezero figure comes with a base, but every Threezero DLX scale Transformers figure does. Around the front for the nameplate area of sorts, it says Transformers The Last Knight and Nemesis Prime in purple, once again to match the colour of his eyes. There's a ton of sculpted Cybertronian techie looking detail on the surface, and while it's a sizable base, it's a large one. It needed to be this size to accommodate Nemesis Prime because he, too, is sizable. And he's pretty heavy. So if this base was smaller, it might not have worked for aerial poses using the flight pole, which can be actuated forward and back. This part locks in. Then the top piece is telescopic and ratcheted. You can bring it up and down. It's got a pretty good reach to it. This little part up top you can pull out and adjust depending on the angle you're trying to go for. Before we get to weapons, let's talk about the boring stuff. We get some bracket pieces and a clip for his sword. I'll show you what these are used for a little bit later. A swap out panel for his forearm and an interchangeable mouthpiece. He comes with the mouth plate pre-installed on him, which is good, because that's how I want to display him anyway. But we will try the mouthpiece. Okay, now weapons. It's a shield, but it's also a gun. It's a gun shield, or a cannon shield. Optimus came with the collapsed version of the shield. Nemesis Prime has the expanded one. So, if you wanted to give this to Optimus, the connections, they're the exact same between both figures. That's doable. I'm partial to Nemesis being displayed with the gun version of the shield. It just seems more sinister. And the paint applications, they're outstanding. For the silver, red, blue, the flames with the blue pinstriping on them, you can see how light bounces off the surface. This thing looks like it's made of metal, but it's not. It's all plastic. The forearm blade, this thing is grungy as. With the black wash and the speckling, still there's a shine to it. It's got a keyed post on the back. I'll show you how this connects up to him. So the shield technically is new. Optimus came with a shield, but it didn't look like that. This, though, is the one real new accessory for Nemesis Prime. His four-barreled, they call it an ion blaster in the instructions. I'm going to call it a hand cannon. The metallic blue and red, that's there so that you know this is Optimus's gun. It's darker in color versus the other weapons. It's more of a gunmetal, but it's got the Cybertronian glyphs on it. They're present on the other weapons too. See what I mean? Cybertronian glyphs on the edges of the blade for the sword on both sides. And the paint applications are just as glorious on the sword as everything else. Super shiny and metallic. Then we've got some silver chipping, some black speckling, and some brown speckling in certain places to make it look rusty, or that could be oil spray from a couple of Transformers Nemesis Prime has slashed with this. And lastly, a full array of hands, all painted in metallic silver with black pitting on them. You need to switch out these armor plates between the hands. You only get one set of them. How do you feel about non-articulated finger hands with DLX scale Transformers? Sometimes you need to have fixed gestures like this. The fingers at this angle wouldn't be possible with articulated finger hands, I don't think. And the same thing can be said with the closed fists. They never look super convincing with articulated fingers. But why not do both, Threezero? Give us fixed gesture hands and some articulated ones. These are the trigger finger hands for those wondering. The fingers are soft enough so that you can pry them open and pop the gun in there without having to grab a hairdryer. Relaxed open palm hands, gripping hands, and fingers splayed out style pose hands. What we're going to do now is get Nemesis Prime himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. How do you take an already near perfect Transformers figure to the next level? Simple. If it's Optimus, you make him more badass by turning him into Nemesis Prime. That's what Threezero have done. They've dialed down the saturation of the colors. They've added the red to the side of his head. And they've added way more black wash and speckling all over him. This was already one of my favorite DLX releases. But now, he might be top 5 for me. Not sure if he's number 1, we'll have to wait and see throughout the course of this video. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Does he transform? No. Does that bother me? No. Because some of you may not know this, but the only company that can make transforming Transformers, Hasbro/Takara Tomy. Everyone else needs to make die-cast figures, action figures, model kits, bobbleheads. Lego do their own thing. Yes, they transform, but not in a traditional sense. That's why Threezero decided to go this route. Pure articulation, engineering, paint app, and proportions, perfection. He's unencumbered by a transforming gimmick. They don't need to hide anything away. There's no hollow sections. There's no articulation limitations where there shouldn't be. That's why I love DLX. Yes, it would be cool if he could transform, but then what you're left with is a compromised robot mode in some way, whether it's proportions or aesthetics or paint apps or articulation, and a compromised vehicle mode, because they can never be perfect. The panels will have panel lines on them, there'll be gaps and hinges and stuff that simply wouldn't be present on the real-life truck. I would much rather grab this Nemesis Prime and a die-cast, really high-end, beautiful, sleek-looking, accurate vehicle mode model and pop them in my collection, which is in fact what I've been doing. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Nemesis Prime's head sculpt and the battle mask. I thought we'd start off with the mask on because, let's be honest, if you're getting Nemesis Prime, you're probably going to rock him like this. Am I wrong? Because I sure as shit am going to have him with the mask on. The mouth is there, it's an option. We'll try it on this head sculpt in a second. But this sculpt is so mean. It looks similar to the one that we got with Optimus, but they actually had to change the engineering for the light up function to meet new battery law safety standards, so I reckon they've done some refining when it comes to the sculpt itself. Detail looks a bit sharper, and the paint applications with the metallic red on one side, then the blue and the little cracks they've been painted on the surface. Brilliant. No complaints with this head sculpt from me. My favourite detail is probably the purple LED light up for the eyes, and the sculpt detail around the edges of those eyes. In the movies, they have this almost aperture look to their eyes, and somehow Threezero managed to capture that in DLX scale. It might not be coming across on camera super well, maybe if we turn the LEDs off. Still not sure. There's sculpted detail, but it's a lot more obvious in person. And you just saw that to turn the lights on, there's a button in the head crest. No fiddly switches, no having to dismantle the head sculpt, and the batteries they use, yes, they're button cells, but they're massive ones. They're not those dicky little button cells that Hot Toys uses. The batteries in his sculpt, I borrowed from my last night Optimus Prime, and they're 2 years old at this point. They still have plenty of juice left in them. Now the mouth option. It's good. The detail is sharp. Love the black washes, and the same thing goes for the entire head sculpt actually, plus the black speckling effect. But I already told you, Nemesis Prime in my display, he'll be wearing the battle mask. Let's pop that back on. I'm sorry if you like the mouth. I'm partial to it, but not for Nemesis Prime. He has to wear the mask. Now, underneath the head sculpt, the neck is fully detailed. And it's got a ton of range. You'll see what I mean when we get to articulation. Even on the back of Prime, his head sculpt, his neck with the little hoses, these smokestacks with the heat-treated effect to them, the blue, then yellow, then green shading. That's meant to simulate them having been superheated as he's been driving around as a truck, and now they're discolored. That, great attention to detail. I honestly want them to do this sort of stuff on Optimus smokestacks more often. Then the metallic, really rich, vibrant blue for the panels, with the darker red flames on them, and the soot effect on the surface that's textural, you can feel it. That adds to the Nemesis Prime vibe. He's nowhere near as clean as Optimus was when he looked like this. I always struggle with these Threezero Transformers because they're technical. How do I describe any of this stuff? The greebly surface detail pieces. The smokestacks tuck in underneath these panels, then there's some gold paint apps at the bottom of them. And if you crunch him forward, in traditional Threezero fashion, there's spinal column detail. He gets skinny, but that is accurate to the CGI model. There's more to him around the back over and above sculpt work and paint applications and detail. There is that stuff, but also some gimmicks and weapon storage. Removing this top panel, the peg port is keyed. Then we've got a post with a notch up top, so that too is keyed. But the end that connects the shield is slightly skinnier. Once you connect the shield to his back, you can rotate it freely. It's supposed to sit straight up and down, I think, but I'm partial to the angled look. Or, removing the shield, bringing in this clip, you can slot the sword on his back. This, also a great option, and it too can rotate. Oh, and just one more thing, this panel on his Nemesis Prime booty is removable, because that's where you connect him to his flight stand. The one thing that I reckon the designers in charge of this look for Prime nailed over and above everything else, the proportions. It does a lot of other stuff right, but proportions stick out to me the most. Broad chest, massive shoulders with the extended shoulder pads and the spikes on them. These are articulated, you can move them around and alter the proportions. The massive biceps. These spikes on his elbows give him an even bulkier look for the arms. The forearms, the size of the fists. Then, the narrower waist. This triangular superhero physique Dorito thing he's got going on, that is very movie accurate. Let's do some detail hunting, because you do need to hunt for it. That was one of the biggest complaints from Transformers 4 onwards. People didn't like that there's very little alt mode stuff visible when the bots transform into their robot modes, and I get it. You want your Transformers to have wheels and other bits and pieces on their bodies so you can tell what they're supposed to transform into. They decided not to go that route from TF4 onto TF5. I like the sleeker look. I can suspend my disbelief because these are transforming giant robots that turn into vehicles. But I'm also partial to seeing visible truck mode pieces, like the smokestacks, and these Western Star logos on the grills for his pecs. Not sure if I noticed them when I reviewed Optimus, but that is a nice nod to his truck mode. Question for you all, how do you feel about the collared look for Optimus? With these silver stepped plates forming a collar of sorts around his head sculpt. Let me know down in the comments. They're painted in metallic silver, there's a decent shine to them. Then they've added this black speckling effect over the top to make them look completely disheveled. There's a lot of sculpt detail above his chest pieces, and some more of it underneath his shoulder pads, including on the inside underneath the panels themselves. That right there could potentially be a brake disc. Under his arms, some hoses and cables, and some more gold paint. Coming down to his waist, this area looks classic Optimus Bayverse to me. The dongle that he had on the front of his crotch is still there. These skirt pieces painted in that beautiful metallic blue, they're articulated, so you can move them out of the way during posing. The side ones as well, and the back ones. These two are on ball joints and hinges. The Cybertronian glyphs, we've got one on either side for his thighs, then a bunch of them down here. They're just printed on, they're not sculpted, but they're crisp as on the shiny but well-weathered shin armor pieces. Then two more up top for his collar, one on either side. The legs are deceptively sleek. From a distance, nothing really jumps out at you except for maybe these rubbery metallic red hoses. But the closer you get, the more detail you'll start to notice. The teeth on those gears, there's two of them. The little rivets, the copper sections, the springs around the back, the gold pieces, even more gold for his feet. These little pieces with the rivets on them, sculpted detail underneath his feet. This is a design that just keeps on giving. And because the sculpt work is so deep and so sharp, it drinks up the black wash that they've applied to it. So everything pops. What do you know? More detail on his forearm. Let's pop on his shield, and to do that, you need to remove this armor plate. Et voila! Now we've got a keyed port available. Bringing in the bracket piece that we can connect the shield up to, make sure you push it in as far as it will go. Because while the shield isn't overly heavy, the last thing you'd want is for the shield to fall off when you've got this guy in a dynamic pose. you can rotate the shield on that bracket piece, which means you can have it facing forward as though he's using it as a gun. And while we've got this port out, you can attach this bladed weapon. Not my favorite of the weapons that he comes with. I'm going sword and shield. This little one, it'll be popped in an accessory tub. Before we move on to comparisons, I don't think I've hammered home just yet how good the weathering is, and how dark the color palette is. Normal Optimus was way brighter than this. The feet alone, the rusty speckling effect, they look like you'd get tetanus if you touch them. Those red panels, they're bordering on burgundy. The blue is the most vibrant metallic paint app applied to him, but even it is a lot darker than what we got with Optimus. For a quick side-by-side comparison, I know they look like the same thing, and that's because technically they kind of are the same thing. Nemesis Prime on the left and Optimus Prime on the right. Optimus is brighter overall with more vibrant blues and reds and a shinier silver with less of a black wash. But the mold is identical. I think the head sculpt is newly tooled for Nemesis and he's got the red on one side. But everything else, if you already own Optimus, you know what to expect with Nemesis. Revenge of the Fallen Prime by Threezero, one of their best, most accurate DLX scale transformers ever. How does he compare to Nemesis Prime? They're very different looks. So different, in fact, that I don't mind having both of these in the collection, even though they're both Optimus Prime from the Bayverse. Well, Nemesis Prime, but you know what I mean. Last Night B, next to Nemesis Prime, this is a killer pairing. Give B the hammer, have him facing off against Nemesis Prime in the collection. Don't mind if I do. I adore my Bayverse Transformers designs. But you can't beat Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. That is peak live-action Optimus Prime right there. He looks taller than Nemesis Prime. That's just because of the big honkin' smokestacks on his shoulders. Same thing goes for Rise of the Beasts Optimus. Not as classic G1 as Bumblebee movie, but still a lot more so than Bayverse, especially the night look for Optimus. Going over articulation, forgive me if this segment is a bit clunky or if I miss a joint. It's entirely possible because there's so many moving parts and pieces on him. Starting off with his head sculpt, ball joint at the base of the neck, then the head also sits on a ball joint. Looking forward to there just with the neck, but if you hinge it forward, he will look a little bit further down. Up to there, plenty of range for a flight pose, swivel, and tons of pivot side to side. Shoulder pads can be moved out of the way on multiple hinges. The outer one is on a ball joint, I believe. Arms will go up to there, forward and back. There's a butterfly that gives you so much range that also goes up and down. Swivel at the bicep, then check this out. Double bend at the elbow, going past 90. And these armor plates, they're on hinges, they move out of the way, exposing a little bit more detail underneath them. Then for the wrists, hinges and ball joints. This is always my favorite point of articulation on Threezero Transformers because it's almost unbelievable how much range you get out of the midsection. And there's some extra detail back here when you crunch him forward. Going back, less than forward, but plenty of range for me. Swivel at the midsection, pivot side to side, and another swivel at the waist. It's a little bit tight on my copy. So for the legs, I prefer to move these pieces out of the way first. They're on hinges and ball joints, just to avoid any kind of paint rub. The legs will drop down at the hips. These are also really stiff joints. Now this leg is sitting lower than the other one. Going forward all the way. Still cannot believe what this guy can do. Going out to there. Swivel at the upper thigh. Double bend at the knee. Can it go past 90? Yeah, of course it can. Then for the feet, a series of joints, mostly hinges. Good for forward and back, rotation, ankle tilt. Then we've got a toe joint. Wrapping up on Threezero's DLX scale Nemesis Prime. Get this piece. He takes everything that I already loved about the first one and elevates the mold to that next level. The paint applications are even better. The red on the side of the head, that looks cooler. And you get the gun. If you missed out on the first one, don't miss your chance to get this version, because I reckon he's the superior one anyway. It's been a while since I reviewed Optimus, and I forgot all about how good this mold is. This is Threezero just flexing on us. The engineering that went into this Nemesis Prime is otherworldly. How is the engineering this good, and the paint apps as sharp as they are, and the accuracy at a point where it looks like the CGI model rotating around in front of me, and the price point isn't astronomical? He's relatively affordable, and I barely ever talk about price because it's up to you to decide if something is worth buying or not at any given price. This Nemesis Prime, I strongly believe, is a must-have. The most badass moment from the last night, the fight scene with B, you can now recreate that in DLX scale with Nemesis Prime and Bumblebee if you have him. If you don't, lucky for you, he's being reissued. I think they timed that reissue pretty well alongside the release of Nemesis Prime. Now, I got mine as a review sample from Threezero Direct. I've popped a link to their site in the description, but like I said in the intro, at the time of filming this video, I think he sold out. If you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.